Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I am here with Bradford Ferguson of Halter Ferguson Financial. We're going to talk about something different today. It is Elon Musk related, but it's about Elon's diet, his weight loss, the medications in particular that he uses, the fasting strategy. We're going to talk about all that. Bradford has a perspective that is different and deeper than a lot of what I've seen when people talk about this. So let's get into it, Bradford. Are you ready? Let's
go.
What we heard from Elon October 1st, he was asked about his weight loss by Eva McMillan. Eva McMillan, a very, very good Florida realtor here in Brevard County. She asked him what's his secret to his weight loss, and he said fasting and Wegovy. Wegovy is a medication. We're going to talk about that in a second. Then today there was a conversation where Elon said that he mentioned Ozempic as well, fasting and Ozempic, Wegovy, and no tasty food near me, which is what I try to do. Is when I'm living alone in my own place is I don't buy bad stuff. And if you live with the wrong person or you're around the wrong situation, then there's bad stuff around and it's easy to eat stuff that might taste good but isn't good for you. And honestly, for me, it doesn't even have to be tasty. It just has to be like food. So Ozempic is a longstanding diabetes medication. Wegovy, I think, is a diabetes medication. And the one you were talking about is Mounjaro. So let's start with this. What got you into this topic?
I was working with my doctor and working on weight loss and really struggling. I took a medication that was more of like an amphetamine. That didn't work for me. That got my heart rate going too much. I took another medication that it dopes you up. It gets your salivary glands going so you don't feel that hungry. But that got my blood pressure going too much. And it's like in April of 2020, which is a pretty stressful time.
Tax time,
so
yeah.
those didn't work. And eventually my doctor told me about Wegovy, and I started taking that last December. Let me skip ahead for a second. I'm down 50 pounds since then. I took Wegovy for about 6 months or so, and then I switched over to Lilly's Mounjaro. One thing I could share is Wegovy, Ozempic, Trulicity, and Saxena. They're all kind of like the same thing, and that drug class has been around for 15 years. And essentially what it does is it slows down your stomach. So you go to sit down and eat, and you put down what you normally would eat, and essentially you get halfway through and you'll have like a little burp or like a little feeling of revulsion. Like the food is good, but your body will just start to be like, and that's when you know you're done eating. So it's really powerful stuff. And what you end up doing is you eat half as much, but you eat a little more often, maybe once every 2 to 3 hours instead of 3 big meals a day. And what I was struggling with was eating after 7 p.m. So I would normally have maybe a snack as my girls go to bed. And then after my wife goes to bed, I might have like a full meal.
Yeah.
And
that's my story too.
I tried to things like keeping food out of the house. I've even like took credit cards away from myself. So like
wow.
I've tried a lot of things, but when it comes down to it, I have an addiction to food, and I'll eat when I'm stressed. I'll eat when I'm bored. I'll eat when I'm depressed. I'll eat when I'm anxious. I'll eat when I'm happy and celebrating. I'll eat when I'm sad. So if someone called it like the awake diet or something like that, if I'm awake, I'm eating. So for me, this is not medical advice or financial advice. I am a financial advisor.
Not financial advice.
I'm not a doctor, but these medications do work really well. And the thing that's interesting about Mounjaro is that, and this is what my doctor said to me 4 months ago, is that what they're seeing from the clinical trials is that it's twice as effective as Wegovy. And it has the same side effects, the same nature of side effects as far as They're more or less around digestive. It could be some acid reflux or burping. So like there's some days where I burp like half the day. So it can be unpleasant, but I I've been able to pretty easily lose the weight. I've added some exercise. Calories still matter. Calories in versus calories out. That still matters. But it's definitely changed my life, and I'm extremely grateful for my doctor. Right now, Mounjaro is not yet have obesity on their label, but it's being fast tracked by the FDA for that.
So you're using it off as what's called an off-label use. It's really there for something else. It's been approved for some other use, and your doctor said, "Hey, I want you to use it for this." It's called an off-label use. What is it approved for in the first place?
It's approved for type 2 diabetes, where people have it and they'll lose weight, but it'll also lower their A1C, which is like their average blood sugar.
Right.
Or insulin level. I'm not sure.
It's a measure of if your A1C is too either low or high, it's an indication that you have diabetes. Is
right.
One of the simple ways I've heard it. Let me just, before we dive more into Mounjaro, I just want to say this is really personal to me because I'm on a somewhat similar journey. I haven't taken medication, but a little over a year ago, my weight has bounced between 190 and 230, up and down for probably more than 10 years, maybe even 20 years. And when I get serious, I pursue a particular diet. I've tried different diets. One that worked for me a lot was the South Beach diet, where you just didn't eat any carbs for like 2 weeks. And it supposedly, that's keto, whatever. It turns off the body's desire for food or something and makes you not hungry. The first 2 weeks are hard. It wasn't really that hard. And then you just like slowly reintroduce some carbs, but not too many. And so there's different versions of keto diets. I thought the South Beach diet was the one that worked for me. And I would do that and I would lose weight and I would get down to 190 and then I would keep it for a while. And then at some point I would fall off the wagon, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And recently I was up to 220. This time I nipped the bud at 220. I didn't wait for 230 and I'm down to about 200 and I haven't been able to get down to 190. And people who follow me probably have noticed I've gotten stronger. I've been going to the gym every day almost every day for over a year now. And I went to the gym and actually started some physical therapy too. I noticed some issues in that. But I found over the course of my life that exercise does not help me lose weight. It's like zero impact on my weight. It might make me stronger. It might put the weight in better places. I'm definitely bigger. My shoulders are bigger. My thighs are bigger. My waist might be a little smaller, but it doesn't, like, there's that psychological view. Like, to me, it still looks big. I still see the jelly roll, for lack of a better term. And I really, I know I need to lose. So one of the things I started doing was I started skipping breakfast, because fasting is a technique. And then some days I skip lunch. When I'm good, I skip breakfast and lunch and only eat dinner. But I have this problem, and my snacking is different, by the way. My snacking is, if I'm watching YouTube or if I'm watching something, I could be watching a television show. I don't watch much television. And I used to watch a lot of sports. When I would watch sports, I would start snacking. If I watch something on television, like popcorn, peanuts, peanut, like a spoonful of peanut butter, like a heaping tablespoonful of peanut butter, and then another one, right? And so it's a challenge and my solution that has worked for me in the past was just don't have that stuff around me. Like buy the healthy stuff that you're good at eating and that you're comfortable eating, and then don't buy, fridge should be almost empty. The cabinet should be almost empty. And then, and I have not tried medication. And we should say this, by the way, I don't know about Ozempic, but Wegovy and Mounjaro are expensive. Can we address that first? It's like $1,000 a month.
Yeah. So insurance doesn't cover it if you don't have diabetes, if you don't have type 2. So yeah, it's $1,000 a month. Yeah. Sometimes they might give you a discount if you first start using it, kind of like the drug dealers, like, hey, the first one's free,
Yeah.
And the other issue is that it's medication that you kind of have to stay on. They've done studies of taking people off of it, and people gain all the weight back. So it does hack your body. It does slow you down, but like you're for me and for many people, like our survival instinct is, we want to add on weight to kind of like protect ourselves in the winter and all that, and
Yeah,
it fights us.
especially up north where you are.
And earlier you mentioned working out. Like I think one issue I've had in the past when I'd work out is I would get hungry. I get hungrier when I work out. With this medication, it doesn't happen for me. So like I've been able to add the working out, and I haven't had to like add much as far as calories.
Yeah,
Which is
I actually don't find that working out makes me hungry. I find that there's something, I think it's, for me, I think it's mental. And lots of people think I'm mental, just to be clear, especially recent days, people think I'm mental. I get
yes,
accused of being mental all the time. And I'll own it up. I'm somewhat mental and I'm happy. I'm happy with, some people medicate their mental health issues. I like to celebrate my mental health issues. It's just a different choice. But I genuinely believe for me, it's a mind game. And it's like, how do I train my mind not to do that? And like I've gotten down to 200 and I'm happy about getting to 200. I have this idea in my head. I'm going to get to 195 and I'm going to get to 190. And there's this sort of long-term goal of getting the weight down. And for me, like I'm 6 feet tall, and even at 200, I'm technically, what's the word? I'm overweight. I don't think I'm obese, but
right.
I'm overweight. And I'm strong, but I still heavier than I should be for my, and for longevity purposes, my goal is longevity. I don't know what your thoughts are if you just, and you want to feel better too, right? But
Yeah, my thoughts are this is expensive, but I'd rather live my life healthy than not.
right.
And though Tesla has helped me out in some ways, like I think there's a lot of people out there who are sick and tired of their situation, are willing to sacrifice in other ways. And I think I've saved money on eating out. Like I used to have dinner like right before I come home at night, and then have another dinner when I get
Right.
home.
Right.
And like this dinner I would have, it would be like $10 at the grocery store or whatever. So I think I'm saving money in some ways, but there's a potential that maybe this medication messes with your body in a way they don't understand yet. It does cause the pancreas to overact a bit, and there could be a risk of pancreatic cancer later on. But that's something I'm willing to accept to live more healthy along the way.
Well, the risk of carrying an extra 50,
longevity.
well, the thing is, the risk of carrying an extra 50 pounds is very significant too.
Yeah.
And I have a family history of heart disease. And for those who don't know, my brother passed away in June, and I think the cause was heart disease. And so I'm very sensitive to that. And I want to be healthy. And that's not, I mean, I started losing weight before my brother passed away, but it's just like added incentive. Like I want to be healthy. I have not persuaded myself to do, I'm very resistant to medication. Like, doctors for years have wanted me to take a statin drug for cholesterol. And 20 years ago, a doctor was telling me to take a statin, and I said no. And I've said no consistently for 20 years. And over those 20 years, the recommendations have changed to where I'm no longer really in the category where they recommend statins, even though my cholesterol levels haven't really changed that much. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but I just look at something like this, and it's obvious that it works, right? It worked for you.
Yeah.
Wegovy and then Mounjaro worked for you. Wegovy's worked for Elon. We can see examples of people for whom it worked. There is that challenge of, if you stop taking it, the studies show you will gain the weight back.
Yeah.
And that's why for me, it's like, okay, and I think the answer to this, by the way, from science is like my question is, can I train my mind to do better? And I think the scientific answer is no. That doesn't work for most people. That the idea that you're going to train yourself, and by the way, really quick, t-shirts at elonbits.com, Critical Enthusiasm is one of my favorite t-shirts, but most people don't get it. Lots of other t-shirts at elonbits.com. And please support me on the Locals platform, Patreon, or as a YouTube channel member. But
yeah, I for me to come off of this, so my expectation is when I get to my goal weight, that I would take some kind of maintenance dose, potentially for the rest of my life. Yeah, it's possible that maybe I could get my habits to be pristine, where if I'm stressed or whatever, or bored, that I'm, not even tempted to do it. There would have to be like certain triggers for me to come off. And like, I'm trying to learn in my life, like if the medicine is working, keep taking it.
Yeah.
I know there's a societal resistance to it. I know this is controversial. People have their own ideas for sure.
And for me, the trigger, when you mentioned triggers, like for me, one advice I've heard from people that I'm trying to implement and I'm not succeeding yet is when you feel the urge to eat, get a glass of water. When you feel the urge to eat, go for a walk. Like I think those are good ideas, and I tell myself I'm going to implement those. If you're on Clubhouse occasionally, if you're on people have teased me on Clubhouse because I'm eating during Clubhouse is an app where people have conversations. It's audio only, and you see a picture of the person, and they can hear me eating sometimes during Clubhouse. Like it's just there's idle moments where you're not doing anything, and maybe you want to do something with your hand. I think I really need a girlfriend, but one who isn't going to give me bad food. Like if I could devote my attention to the girlfriend and she was willing to have attention devoted to her, then maybe that would be a better distraction than the food. I don't know. I don't know if there's an answer to that question.
Yeah.
I find in general in my life, women have not necessarily been a good influence on my diet.
Yeah. I do want to mention about the drug. It's the study that they did for it. The average weight of the participants was 231 pounds.
This is Mounjaro? This is Wegovy, or is a study of both?
This is Mounjaro.
Okay.
And many participants lost 22.5% of their body weight, which is about 52 pounds from the starting weight of 231 pounds. And up to 57% of participants reached a 20% weight reduction. And not everybody in the study was using the full dose. There were participants that used the lowest dose and they lost 15% of their body weight over 72 weeks, which is more than Wegovy.
Sorry, 72 weeks is more than a year, just to be clear.
Yeah. And I think this is a big deal because a lot of people don't currently inject themselves with drugs on a weekly basis. I'm a needle phobe. For a while, I needed someone to help me inject the drug. I do it myself now, but the fact that Mounjaro is the clinical study shows is twice as effective, I think it may help get some people over that hump. I think it expands the potential market.
Let me ask you to explain twice as effective. What is the result from Wegovy in the studies, and how is the Mounjaro study twice? In what way is it twice as effective? Is it they lost twice as much weight?
Twice the weight.
Twice as many people lost weight. What's the?
Twice the weight loss.
They didn't do a study. They didn't do a study with like 3 groups, right? Control, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. There was a study of Wegovy versus control, and then there was a study of Mounjaro versus control, right? As far as we know, there hasn't been a direct study comparing the 3 of them yet.
Yeah, one head to head. So they're saying Wegovy is 35 pounds, so it's maybe not twice as good. So that's a good, but it's still like 80% better. So it's not quite 100% better, but it's maybe 80% better.
Yeah,
but that's still a big deal.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if eventually Elon switches over. I don't really care. Wegovy is very effective. I might even use it if I ever go to a maintenance cycle. But I think this first class of drugs is going to be disrupted by Mounjaro, and that it's not financial advice, but I do think Mounjaro is going to become a really big piece of Eli Lilly's business.
Can we talk about the science of this for a second? To your understanding, what is this the pathway, what is the interaction in the body that causes these diabetes drugs to help people lose weight? Is it working on the brain? Is it working on some part of the digestive system? What is it doing that causes you to eat less? I mean, I think what you're saying is it causes you it removes the desire to eat, or it causes you to eat less? What's your understanding of the pharmacological mechanism that, what does it act on that causes this change in behavior?
So the Wegovy class, all the older drugs, it essentially works on your pancreas to slow down your stomach. And there's a receptor in the pancreas called like the GLP-1 or the GIP that it works on to create that effect. And then your stomach doesn't have as much room. So when you're eating, then you're forced to stop. What the Mounjaro drug does is it also works on your liver. It slows down production of sugar in the liver, which is a big deal. And it also has some effect on the brain. I'm not sure they even understand yet.
Are these drugs demonstrated not only to be effective in weight loss, but demonstrated to be effective in helping diabetes 2 patients more so than previous drugs?
They're extremely effective. So I think a lot of diabetes 2 patients are taking these because of how effective they are in lowering A1C. I'm not sure what else lowers or controls A1C, but I think it's a big deal, especially for if you have diabetes and you're overweight. And even if you're not overweight, I think you can be taking a maintenance dose of this. I'm not 100% clear. I know these drugs are a pretty big deal for the companies that have been selling them for a long time.
Why are they so expensive? Was the research and development that much money? I mean, once you see them reach a broad market, shouldn't the price fall, or is it one of those things where they've got patent protection and they don't care? Or would their competition between Wegovy and Mounjaro lead them both to drop in price at some point? Like, let's say you're right and Mounjaro becomes very successful, and Wegovy sees like diminishing sales, and Wegovy says, well, we got to do something, and they lower the price to $400 a month instead of $1,000 a month. Does that, I'm trying to think for myself, like $1,000 a month, like that's just beyond my pain threshold right now. I might get better at some point. And there is a psychological thing. I just don't want to take a medication every day. Especially, is it every day or is it once a week shot?
It's once a week.
Okay. And is it intramuscular, or is it, how do you inject it?
You do it near your belly button. So like there's a 2-inch ring around your belly button. You do it.
Okay. I mean, is
and
it going?
It's an auto injectable. So you basically hold it firm against your stomach, and then you press a button, and you wait 10 or 7 seconds, and then you just pull it away. And sometimes it'll sting a bit. Usually it doesn't.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I think even $400 a month wouldn't persuade me. Like I genuinely view it as like, I need to work on myself.
I've been getting some questions from people where they'll go to their doctor and they'll ask for Mounjaro, and the doctor will say, well, it's not on label right now to treat obesity. And it can be hard to find a different doctor. You can possibly start off with a drug like Wegovy if that's appropriate for you. You can also find a company online to prescribe you one of these medications to get started.
Well, that's kind of the game, isn't it? Like, we have this bizarre prescription drug system where you can't get it. Like I couldn't get the horse paste drug when I had that strange thing that we were talking about for the last few years. And there was actually a list of doctors you could call to get the prescription for the horse paste drug, which, by the way, worked extremely well for me. Maybe it was placebo, I don't know. And then I had it, like, the regular pharmacies wouldn't sell it, and I had to go to a Chinese pharmacy, like a small, non chain pharmacy, happened to be run by a Chinese guy, whatever. There I think there's a string of Chinese pharmacies around, and he was near where I lived at the time. So I think the same thing is true here. Like, you can't get this, so you find a doctor online who will give you the prescription. I've actually been thinking about getting certain, like I mentioned, my heart, the risk of heart disease. There's certain testing I want to get done, and I might not be able to get a regular doctor, local doctor here to order those tests, even if I'm paying for them.
Yeah.
Like some blood work and a carotid ultrasound or something like that. And I was talking to a friend, and he says, "Oh, I can give you a doctor who'll give you the prescription online." Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, then the prescription drug system is just really dumb, isn't it? Like if
Well,
I go to my
as
doctor and he
long
won't
as
prescribe it, and I could just shop around for a different doctor, then why do we have this stupid system? Like, why am I not adult enough to make my own decisions about what medications I want to take? If I can just shop
I'll
around and find a
agree.
doctor anyway.
I'll agree and disagree. So, um, they're going to ask you some questions around your medical history and all that. So there may be some things that preclude you from using one of these medications. The other thing is that my doctor actually reads the studies and figures out, okay, this drug is like this. So immediately she knew that Mounjaro was very similar to Wegovy and that I could tolerate Wegovy. Whereas a lot of doctors don't read the studies, they don't talk to the salespeople, and they don't prescribe things off label.
Right.
So it's like, I agree, but I don't, and it is kind of silly. And I wish like doctors were more uniformly. I don't know if it's competent, but I think there's like so many drugs out there. It's got to be hard to keep tabs on everything.
Another question I have for you, I mean, like if you can't get Mounjaro, maybe you can get Wegovy, and if you can't get Wegovy or you can't afford Wegovy, there's also this Ozempic drug. Is that less expensive? Is it less effective? What's the story with Ozempic? It's another diabetes drug that's in the same class as Wegovy, and Elon specifically mentioned Ozempic. So
Yeah.
That's Ozempic, by the way. So what is it about Ozempic? Because that's been around longer, right?
Yeah, he might have started on that one first. Ozempic is more for diabetes, and it has dosage for if you're specifically treating diabetes with it, whereas Wegovy is more of a weight loss dose. So those are doses that the FDA approved.
Right. And to be clear, weight loss is good. Weight loss is good for people with diabetes too.
There's one called Saxena, which I think is I think it's as effective, but I think you have to do the injections once a day or something like that. So that's more of a drag.
Do you have trouble remembering to take your shot, or is that not a challenge for you?
It's not a challenge. I have an alarm on my phone that goes off, and I just need to make sure I don't make some kind of excuse, and I just go get it out and let it warm up, and then I do it. Yeah.
What do you mean warm up? What there's a process for that too?
You're supposed to keep it in the fridge, so I just let it warm to room temperature, so it's not like me.
Does that take like an hour?
Cold. I don't study it. So I just let it warm up for like at 15 to 30 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us about the burps. Elon, some niche gamer asked Elon, does it give you those nasty burps too? And Elon said, yeah, next level. So tell us about the burps.
Yeah, there'll be some days where maybe it's what I had for breakfast or the night before or whatever's going on in my digestive system, but I'll have these burps throughout the day, and they all taste like essentially I'm tasting like my stomach, whatever my stomach tastes like. It's not like super acidy, but like there's an odor to it. It is kind of gross, and I'd say it's happened maybe 3 or 4 days out of nearly 300 days now.
Right. Now
so it's not that bad, but it is something that happens. I'd say the worst part is sometimes you get really bad constipation. And also if you eat after 7 p.m., the acid reflux is bad when you sleep. Like you have to sleep reclining, and even then the acid reflux can be pretty bad. So essentially it stops me from eating after 7. And I hardly can drink much alcohol on it either.
So if somebody already has acid reflux, is that something that they would say you shouldn't take this drug because you already have acid reflux? Or is it, well, you already have acid reflux, so you already have it, it's not going to hurt you anymore?
I
Do you
don't
know
know that
is
one.
that
That's a
a
good question.
contraindicator? I mean, I imagine you'd want to talk to your doctor about that. Hey, I have a history of acid. Like I have this bizarre condition called the Shatsky ring, which may or not be caused by stomach acid. And
Mm,
it's a tightening of the esophagus, and you end up like you're swallowing a piece of steak and it won't go down. It's pretty unpleasant when it acts up, which is like once every 5 years. Um,
mm,
so I imagine like my doctor might say, well, I don't want to give it to you because you have a history of this. I
mm.
don't know. So, and
There,
then do you take
there's a drug
medication?
that
Do you take medication for the stomach acid? Like I take omeprazole, which is more commonly known as Prilosec, and I take that because of this Shatsky ring. And that's supposed to reduce stomach acid. Have they talked about taking an acid reducer to help mitigate the symptoms of Wegovy or Mounjaro, or has that not come up?
I did that a couple times. So I did get a prescription and it had like 90 pills in it. But I'm like you. This may sound ironic, but I do want to generally avoid using drugs when I can. And I've maybe taken those pills maybe 6 times.
Yeah.
Um,
You could, just to be clear, you can buy generic omeprazole at like BJ's Wholesale Club, and you get
yeah.
42 pills for $14. And then, I take two, right? So it's 3 weeks for 14 bucks is a lot
Mm,
less than $1,000 a month for Wegovy
yeah.
Mounjaro. And I resisted, just like I resisted statins, I resisted this for a long time until my most recent doctor showed me a study that it reduces the recurrence of Shatsky rings. Okay, now you showed me
Okay.
that, because that's the concern I had. I wasn't sure. I thought the Shatsky ring was going to come back anyway. Like every 5 years it comes back, or every 8 years it comes back. So if it's going to come back anyway, what difference does it make if I take the drug? And he showed me the study. So I had a doctor who did the research. Right, that
Mm,
matters a lot. If you just get a doctor who's like, just take this drug, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what about this? And they don't have an answer, then they're not doing their research. And we live in a world where people are doing their research, and it's really frustrating for doctors because they think they know what to do, but maybe the doctors need to do more research themselves, or
yeah.
read the research. So,
Well, yeah, there's some new exciting things, and luckily this drug is real and it's having a real effect. It's not like something you read about and then nothing ever happens.
let me ask you this.
When this got type 2 diabetes approval, Warren, there was a conference of like endocrinologists or something going on in California, and the speaker was talking, and they weren't even talking about Mounjaro. So like the speaker didn't say anything, and this room of doctors just started applauding because they were getting the notification on their phone. Like, this is very, very promising.
So let me.
Even Wegovy is, really good too.
So yeah, I mean, one question I have that was top of my mind was, you and I are Elon Musk fans, and we're Tesla
Mhm.
fans, and we're SpaceX fans, and Neuralink is coming along. And they're going to have an event on November 30th. There's a rumor I'm going to get invited to this event. We'll see if it happens. And if I get invited to this event, I'm very excited. I'm definitely going to drop everything and go. Neuralink, for those who don't know, is a company that's developing a brain implant that will help cure brain disease. And I wonder if one of the things that Neuralink might be able to do is address our food problems.
Mhm.
I think it would be better if you could train my brain not to eat bad things than to mess with my stomach to get me not to eat bad things, mess with my pancreas and mess with my liver. Like, that's my gut. Like, now maybe messing with my brain has actually got bigger consequences, and we're going to find that out over the years. But do you think there's hope for Neuralink to address weight loss and bad eating habits and things like that? Or have you put
It,
much thought into it?
it's possible. I think there's this big brain body connection. They say that our nervous system around our stomach is rather intense and close to the nervous system that's in our brain. So I think it's definitely possible. But maybe you need a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I did hear a rumor that, there's some study they did with rats with some of these drugs where or mice where mice just stopped eating, period. So I think it may be hard to, find that line.
Do you find you have to force yourself to eat?
No, no. I do purposely eat breakfast though.
Okay.
And there are times, because I do stop eating at 7, where I wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I'm just starving.
Okay. You're starving, like you think it's psychological, or is your body genuinely hungry?
I'm hungry, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that like 6 days after you took your shot, or is it any given day of the week?
I haven't studied that. It sometimes I'll feel like the least hunger and the least revulsion, like really close to the time I'm supposed to get another shot. Sometimes I'm hungrier. Sometimes it's like day 3
Yeah.
after I take my shot where I feel like the medicine kicking in the most, but it's pretty steady throughout the week.
Okay.
You
All right. I can't think of anything else to ask you about this. Is there anything else you want to say?
know? Not really. I think
Oh, no. I know what I
it's
wanted to ask
really
you. Sorry.
exciting. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. So Eli Lilly is the company behind Mounjaro, and
Right.
what's the company behind Wegovy?
Wegovy is Novo Nordisk, I believe.
Okay, and are they both publicly traded companies that people can buy stock in?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some people might say, hey, this is an opportunity. These companies are going to make a lot of money on these drugs. Have they been prescribed to a wide audience yet? Do you think they're likely to be prescribed in a wide audience soon? Is the price point so high that it's not likely to be prescribed to a wide audience? Or what are the prospects for the drugs to reach a wider audience and then have a positive impact on the stocks of these two companies?
So the old class of drugs is approved in Japan and Europe, the US, I believe China, a lot of major countries, India as well. Uh, Mounjaro is not yet approved. I'm guessing in some of the markets. It may not be approved yet in China or whatever, but I think that's coming. And the way I think about it is, people who are doing well financially can, make the decision. I think there'll be people who stretch up, just kind of like there's people who stretch up to buy a Model 3. And or the first time they buy a Tesla, it's the most they've ever paid for a car. I'm guessing that's true for you. Or people stretch up for
Close.
to buy the drug. Um,
My Model 3 was a little bit more than the most expensive car I ever bought. The Model X
wow.
Plaid is way more than any other car I ever bought. Yeah.
So I see this coming worldwide. I'm guessing Novo Nordisk is doing really well. Wegovy and Ozempic and others, they've been really popular on social media, and Mounjaro is starting to gain traction. What surprised me a bit was in the first quarter of production for Lilly. So they're scaling sales, and they're trying to get people to switch over from the other class to Mounjaro, but they're also scaling production. And you and I know how hard it can be to scale production.
Yeah.
In their first quarter of production, it's already 1% of Lilly's revenues. I think that there's a potential that Mounjaro could exceed 100% of the rest of their revenues eventually.
So that leads to the question:
But
is
that's
any of
just
this
like some
potential?
napkin math.
But is any of this gain priced into either stock? Is any of this growth in Wegovy, let's say for Novo Nordisk, and the potential from like you and I see Tesla, going to trillions of dollars because of trillions in revenue, whatever profit, crazy numbers, because of things that it doesn't really do yet.
Right.
Here you have drugs that actually are doing something, right? Like we have FSD beta, but it's not really genuine self-driving yet.
Right.
But Wegovy and Mounjaro are genuinely helping people reduce their weight significantly already. So are the Wall Street analysts, did they see a Twitter overhang, or what is keeping Lilly and Novo Nordisk stock from going up on the news that these drugs are so effective and so valuable?
Lilly did have a substantial run up since the spring. So starting to catch on. Analysts are, they're starting to price that in. And Lilly's generally been pretty successful with many of their recent drugs. So they've been doing pretty well. So I think it's starting to be priced in for Lilly, but nowhere near fully. That's just my opinion. I did not look into Novo Nordisk, so I'm not sure. I'm guessing it's more fully priced there, but it may not be, because it just went viral this year on social media, where a lot of these drugs have been around 15 years.
Well, that's another question: is when do the patents on Wegovy and Mounjaro expire?
I'm not 100% sure, but with the Mounjaro, I'm guessing they have at least like 10 years on it. If they're 17-year patents, I'm guessing it's less than 7 years old. It has been a few years though. And there are little tricks they can do, like it might get enabled for like a pill form or something like that, where people will pay more to take it as a pill rather than injecting themselves.
Or there's a once every other week injection now instead of once every week injection, or they come up with something.
Yeah, I'm not a pharmaceutical analyst. It's not where I've spent my time.
Are there analysts that you've seen who are covering these stocks and addressing these particular drugs that people should look for?
I generally ignore Wall Street and the media. So I don't know. I'm guessing if you were.
Well, you know Kathy Wood. Have you talked to Kathy Wood? Kathy Wood is very forward thinking.
Yeah.
And you know Kathy Wood. Have you talked to her about this drug? Is that something that she's talked about for ARK Invest?
I haven't followed what they're doing with their if you look at their Genomic Revolution Fund, they don't have any Lilly stock, I don't think.
Well, these aren't necessarily genomic related drugs, right? They're just somebody came up with a new way of doing something that's different.
But that's where they have their medicine related stuff.
Right. Okay. All right. So the other question I had for you was, since the drugs are so expensive and since obesity is actually more common among poorer people, is there a social justice issue where we're going to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, protesting that Lilly's making too much money on a drug that should be distributed for free to poor people? Is there a risk that there's going to be some kind of, socialist revolution against these, big bad pharma companies, or are they paying off enough politicians? We don't have to worry about that.
There's certainly a lot of pressure on Lilly. It is very effective. And as these companies scale the production of the drugs, sometimes there can be shortages. And there have been people online who are like, why is Elon taking Wegovy? He's a rich guy. He doesn't have type 2 diabetes, even though it's approved for obesity. He's taking a dose that a person who's diabetic could be taking.
Right. And the same could be said.
There's definitely some of that pressure out there.
I'm just saying, like, if all of a sudden, let's say 4 years from now, Lilly is making, their stock has gone up 5x because of Mounjaro, and the CEO gives a big pay package. I could see Elizabeth Warren, doing a tweet storm. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, attacking big pharma and saying they should, whatever. And there could be some kind of social pressure for them to lower the price of the drugs, which could affect their revenue. Maybe long term they want to lower the price of the drug so they can, if you can cut the price of the drug by 50% and sell 10 times as much of the drug, you make 5 times as much money. So there's sort of a trade. Now, the other side of it is if they can get Medicare to pay for it for anybody who wants it, right? And the insurance companies to pay for it for anybody who wants it. And maybe, they give a lower price to the insurance companies, most likely, but they might not face pricing pressure if they can get insurance to cover it, and that's all hidden, right?
Yeah, maybe eventually they grow production to the point where they're okay lowering the price and they just continue to grow the market that way. That'll certainly be a hard choice for Lilly. I do want to make a bold prediction here. So this is not financial advice.
Not financial advice.
I don't know what day this happens. But I think Lilly has a good shot of becoming the first pharmaceutical company to hit $1 trillion in market valuation.
And what's their market cap today, roughly?
Let me look it up, but I think it's like 350 or so. Let me look.
I got a 335. That was a very good guess. 335 billion.
Good.
Yeah. So they could what you're saying is they could which doesn't actually sound like that much. If you think the revenue from this one drug could equal their current revenue.
Yeah, I think they can 2x their revenue and this has leverage for them. So
right.
They can more than 3x potentially their profits. It's just a question of how quickly it happens.
Now, since we're Tesla guys, I have to ask, is the competition coming?
I have no idea.
Are the Chinese going to? Are they going to Chinese going to come?
Molecule. It's a unique molecule where it affects both the pancreas and the liver in this way. I'm not sure how the other companies do it because the other class of drugs is over 15 years old or around that age. So I think maybe they just started copying each other. That's why, Wegovy's come around and you've had this obesity indication, all that.
Well, I could just see a generic Wegovy in, let's say, 5 years. Mm-hmm. And, okay, it's only half as effective as Mounjaro, but, I'm going to lose 30 pounds instead of 50 pounds. Well, 30 pounds is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to lose 30 pounds on this, and now it's going to cost me, $8 copay at Walmart, right? Or maybe it's a $20 $20 a month instead of, $1,000 a month. That could really cut into Lilly's sales of Mounjaro, or they would have to really come down in price, or they, maybe if the doctors are prescribing it and the insurance companies will pay for it, there's no generic Mounjaro yet, right? And they say this is more effective, so maybe they can still maintain their sales because it's more effective than Wegovy, and then there's no generic for Mounjaro yet. So, and in a sense, it sounds like Lilly would be a better bet than Novo Nordisk, because it sounds like Mounjaro probably has longer patent protection.
Yeah, in that way it does, but I think you make a really good point to one of the risks is that you could have generics start to come out for these older drugs and significantly lowering the price, and that could cut into what Lilly's doing with Mounjaro for sure.
And what about like Chinese companies coming up with something like equivalent and then selling it? They smuggle it into the country like they smuggle fentanyl in the country. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but is there potential for somebody to come up with a generic in another country or a variant in another country that mimics Mounjaro and has the same results? I mean, I would think within 5 years, once biochemists figure out how Mounjaro works, somebody else might find out another molecule that does the same thing.
That's possible for sure. That reminds me of Jeff Dahn and what he's able to do with the additive to Tesla's batteries, where there was a really expensive compound that Tesla was using or that they needed to use to preserve the life of the battery. And what Jeff Dahn was able to do is go on a microfiche.
Yeah, I remember that
old university library or whatever, and look at the chemical signature. And then he was able to find that the chemical signature was exactly the same as another compound that was, much less expensive. Certainly there's that risk, and also there's another risk in that there is kind of a synchronicity that can happen around technological innovation.
Yeah.
Where if it happens somewhere, it's kind of like the George Hotz way of thinking. Well, if Tesla solves it, then magically, AI is going to solve it a year after. I don't really believe it, but the concept of synchronicity could create some competition that something else could bubble up for sure.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, just really quick, when it comes to Tesla solving FSD, SpaceX solved landing orbital rocket boosters 7 years ago. And the competition so far, I mean, I think Rocket Lab is getting closer, but they're not there yet. Yep. And it's probably going to be another 2 or 3 years before anybody even gets close to that. And by the time they get there, SpaceX is going to be on the next generation. And I think the same thing's true with with Tesla and FSD. They're going to achieve FSD, and maybe 5 years later, somebody else will come up with something close. But by the time they get there, Tesla will be on 3 generations beyond. And I guess the same question could apply to Lilly. I mean, if you're already getting people to lose 50 pounds, I mean, I don't know if you're going to try to get people to lose 60, right, or 70. Like at a certain point, like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want them to lose 200. Right. If they're at 230, you don't want to lose 200 pounds. So I almost wonder if there's like, well, this is as good. You can make it, but that's what we were talking about. Maybe they can make it easier. They can make it in pill form. They can make it where you do it every other week or once a month rather than, once a week.
Yeah.
That there's different approaches they might come up with that they can slightly change the chemical formulation and achieve certain results. So that could extend it for a while. But I would think, 20 years out, they're not going to have the advantage anymore. So it's a windfall for the next 5 or 10 years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's sort of there's a limit to how long they make outsized profits. Then the other side of it is, well, if they're that innovative with Mounjaro, and you've mentioned that they're coming up with a lot of other innovative drugs that are succeeding, maybe it's more about the innovation engine at Lilly being really good than it is about just the one drug. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, are they innovating? Do they have a better system for innovation than other pharmaceutical companies?
I have no idea about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think these are really good questions and good risks. They are working on an Alzheimer's drug, but multiple companies are. I'm not. There's a certain way of going about it, which has failed. I'm not sure if Lilly's effort is on that side or on this new way where they don't know if it's a success or failure yet.
Yeah, my mother and her mother.
You're right, it's a temporary windfall. Yeah. So that's something else to take into effect, and that eventually the profits will go away. Worst case when it all goes generic, but those are good points. It's important to know the risks in an investment.
Just really quick about Alzheimer's. My mother had Alzheimer's and my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and every week there'd be a news story about somebody's got a drug that's curing Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. It never pans out, and that's why I'm very excited about Neuralink. Even though Elon said he didn't think Neuralink would solve Alzheimer's, at least early on, I think the potential for Neuralink to help us understand the brain better might maybe help us find drugs or help us find a way to use Neuralink eventually to cure dementia and Alzheimer's as well. And I have more faith in that getting there than I do in this endless attempt. And my mother was offered to participate in 4 different clinical trials when she was first diagnosed. And I looked through the papers on them and I was not impressed. And my uncle, who's a radiologist, was not impressed. And we decided not to put her in any of the trials because they just, even in their earlier phases, they weren't achieving significant results and the risks were too high. So I don't think we're anywhere close on that. But anyway, that's beyond the scope of the discussion. So anything else you wanted to talk about? Because I think I've nailed my points now.
I had fun talking with you, Warren.
Thank you, Bradford, very much. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure. We got to talk about Tesla in the future and some other topics. And so before we finish, Halter Ferguson Financial is a wealth management firm. Could you tell the audience about Halter Ferguson Financial?
Sure. We do work with people who are essentially all in on Tesla, but we also have clients who are more diversified. So we're able to work with both. We do have a YouTube channel, and I'm on Twitter as well. This is not investment advice, if you go to www.hffinancial.com/disclaimer, our disclaimers are there. We are a registered investment advisor. We're not brokers, and
there's a link to the disclaimer in the description below.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I did this with another wealth advisor the other day. Can you describe, like, what you do isn't just picking stocks for people? There's something more that you do for people beyond just picking stocks. Can you explain what it is? Why is it that somebody's like, well, I just want to be all in on Tesla. Why would they need you? What benefit do you want? Or they want to do, they have their own portfolio strategy. Is it tax strategies? What are the other advantages they get from hiring a firm like yours?
Sure. We go really deep on financial planning. There's a meeting that we start with where we talk with the client about what their highest values are in life. It's a really uncommon conversation. And then we talk with them about their financial goals and priorities. So we force them to prioritize their financial goals. And in that way, we can be a fiduciary for them in knowing what's important to them. Many financial advisors, they're unwilling to have emotional, uncommon conversations, even though money's very emotional, taboo subject. So that's a big thing that makes us different. And the planning we do is very customized. It's not cookie cutter. Then on the investing side, the reason why someone who's heavy in Tesla may want to work with us is I want to help people grow their shares over time, whether it's just plowing money in when you get that paycheck, or if it's trimming back after Tesla shoots up, and looking to redeploy that capital a little lower, or using a little leverage, like with some options, or a little margin. We want to be careful about the risk we're taking, and not take a risk that we have the potential to be wiped out, or that kind of thing.
Right.
I think there's been some opportunities, and Tesla's an emotional roller coaster. I feel like we're in a very pessimistic side, and that it may be a good time to add to things. But there's times where everyone just gets over the moon optimistic, and generally those times are not sustainable.
There's times where everyone's to the moon.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a lot of people who are skeptical and worried that this is the time to jump in some sense. Might be the time to jump in.
Yeah.
When everyone's worried, that's when you strike.
Yeah. Generally, you want to be contrarian to the market sentiment. Warren Buffett likes to say, "Be greedy when others are fearful," and that may be the case now. But also, we need to get a little more cautious when everyone's being greedy. I think that's how people can do a little better for themselves longer term.
Yeah.
So that's something we offer. We don't say we can do X results or whatever with that. But this is all I do. All I do is investing. Our planners, all they do is planning and meeting with clients, researching. We don't spend time on the golf course or in networking meetings, anything like that.
You just drive through roundabouts.
I just drive through roundabouts, get upset.
For those who don't know, that Bradford lives in Carmel, Indiana, which is the city with the most roundabouts in America.
That's
and
right.
how is FSD beta doing in roundabouts now that you're on? Are you on 10.69.2.4?
Yes, right now it's a little overly cautious. So sometimes it'll stop in the middle of a roundabout. And I think that's because if you're going like this, and the car is approaching like this, it's assuming that car doesn't stop. I think that the Tesla stops when it has the right of way. And there have been times where the Tesla stopped and the person went right through anyways, like right in front of me, and they shouldn't have gone. So it actually did help that one time out of 100. And sometimes when you're here, and someone's coming down like this, the car's wanting to go at the perfectly wrong time. Like it'll wait, want to go at that exact moment. So I feel like they have more to work on with roundabouts, but when I drive it normally, it does really well at stop signs. It does really well at street lights. It does this changeover now from interstate to interstate, where it used to not be able to change lanes as quickly as it needed to. Now it's doing that, and I've heard in Austin there's someone has to go across 5 lanes in like a half mile or something crazy, and it's doing that now. So it's doing things that it didn't used to be able to do, and there's a lot of improvement that they're making. We just don't see it with these little, we all understand our area super well, so we can be hypercritical a bit, and not really notice the improvement. But there are things that it used to do every time as a mistake that it doesn't do anymore. So I'm confident they'll figure it out over time.
All right. Well,
Sorry,
thank you.
That's a long answer.
No, it's good. Thank you, Bradford. I'm really glad you brought this to my attention. And if Tesla stock 5Xs, maybe I'll start taking Mounjaro.
There you go.
Probably not. I'm going to stick with trying to fix myself, but in many ways. But thank you very much for coming on. For everybody else, I just want to please encourage you to check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please support me on the Locals platform, on Patreon as a YouTube channel member. Check out Bradford's website, link in the description below, for Halter Ferguson Financial, and his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that as well. Check out my other videos, and thank you so much for watching.
Yep. Bye for now.